Yesterday, you listened to a biography about Ray Charles. Remember, a biography is a real or true story about the life of a person. Today, you're going to listen to another biography. This biography is about the life of Helen Keller, who was both blind and deaf. A person who is blind and deaf cannot see or hear. I want you to listen carefully to find out how Helen learned to talk, read, and write, even though she was deaf and blind. But first, let's go over some vocabulary. Our first word is deaf. Say deaf. Deaf means unable to hear, lacking the sense of hearing. Disobedient. Say disobedient. Disobedient means misbehaving, refusing to do what one is told. Frustrated. Say frustrated. Frustrated means discouraged or unable to complete a task as well as one would like. And the last word is sensations. Say sensations. Sensations are feelings caused by one of your senses. Okay, this is the biography of Helen Keller. Close your eyes and imagine sitting in a dark room with no windows and earmuffs covering your ears so that you cannot hear anything. Imagine that you can't see and you can't hear anything or anyone. Imagine that you can't talk either. Now imagine that you've got to stand up and move around this dark and silent room using only your hands and feet to guide you. How would you feel if you had to stay in this room? You'd probably feel startled and frightened by everything and everyone who touched you. You'd probably feel sorry for yourself and frustrated or discouraged that you couldn't tell anyone what you were thinking or what you needed. Well, that's what life was really like for a girl named Helen Keller. Helen Keller was born a long time ago, over 150 years ago. When Helen Keller was a baby, she caught a disease that made her lose completely both her eyesight and her hearing. For the rest of her life, Helen Keller was blind and deaf. Remember, deaf means she was unable to hear, living in a world of total darkness and silence. Life was very hard for Helen Keller as she grew up. She became frustrated and angry because not only was she blind and deaf, she wasn't able to talk or communicate with other people. She felt sorry for herself and was often mean to other people. When children tried to play with her, she broke their toys. One time, she locked her mother in a room so she couldn't get out. At dinner time, Helen walked around the table sniffing everyone's food. If she smelled something she liked on someone else's plate, she would grab it and gobble it up. Why do you think Helen acted this way as she was growing up? Let's see. Helen Keller felt her way through the world, groping and fumbling through the silent darkness. Her senses of touch, smell, and taste were her only connections to the outside world. As an adult, she remembered those days by saying, "I literally thought with my body." The only memories she had from those years were sensations. Remember, sensations were the feelings she got from her senses of touch, smell, and taste. She remembers that when she was really upset, she used to run outside and bury her hot face in the cool leaves and grass. Guided by her sense of smell, she would make her way through the garden until she could smell the roses and violets that calmed her down. Helen Keller's mother and father loved her very much, but because she could not understand the world around her, she seemed disobedient and hard to control. Disobedient means Helen did not do what she was told. When she was 6, her parents hired a special teacher named Anne Sullivan to take care of Helen at home. When Aunt Sullivan came to stay with the family, she figured out that Helen was behaving badly out of frustration and anger. Aunt Sullivan knew that Helen could break out of her dark world if she learned how to communicate with other people. But to communicate, Anne knew Helen would need to learn a lot of words. Anne Sullivan knew that because Helen couldn't hear or talk, she'd never learned what a word was. She started teaching Helen Keller words by using her fingers to write and spell them on the palm of Helen's hand. When Helen Keller splashed her hands with water, Sullivan took Helen's other hand and spelled out the letters in water, W-A-T-E-R. And when Helen Keller pointed to herself, Sullivan spelled out the letters in Helen, H-E-L-E-N. To Helen Keller, learning from Anne Sullivan was like being born a second time. Suddenly, the world was not such a confusing, frightening place. Helen Keller later said, "I had been a little ghost in a no world. Now I knew my name. I was a person. I could understand people and make them understand me." For the first time, Helen had a way to tell people what she was thinking. When Helen wanted to speak to Anne, she wrote words on Anne's hand. However, it took a long time to spell out a whole sentence. Eventually, Anne taught Helen sign language so that she was able to communicate more easily with others. Sign language is a special kind of language in which a person uses only his or her hands and fingers to make signs for letters and words. People use sign language to speak to people who are deaf or hearing impaired. For Helen Keller, however, there was an extra challenge. Since she could not see, she had to feel the other person's hand while they were making the signs in order to communicate using sign language. Helen loves learning so much that Anne knew she would love reading books. Helen left home to go to a special school for blind children, and Anne Sullivan went with her. She learned to read books in Braille, a special kind of writing that uses raised dots on the page. Using Braille, Helen was able to read the words by feeling them with her fingertips. At school, she made a lot of friends and earned excellent grades. Helen was determined to succeed, and with Anne's encouragement, she graduated from both high school and college. Later in her life, Helen Keller became a famous writer and speaker. In her books and speeches, she told the remarkable story of her life. People were amazed that Miss Keller never gave up and was able to overcome the challenges of being both deaf and blind. What a remarkable story. Even though Helen Keller was blind and deaf, she was able to go to high school and college and become a famous writer and speaker. That is so amazing.